Oh, nice.
Keith Rowley, could you please recognize yourself, who you're with, and so on? And you're on mute. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I'm back on. Hi, I'm with a contractor, Silly Town Specialty International. We've just been kind of tracking this job, so just joining today to see if there's any updates.
He's with the contractor.
Contracting us. Okay. Is anybody on for Mayor Kiewit?
Okay.
Okay, and we're still waiting on Marla.
Yeah. We have four, so do you want to go
Okay,
ahead?
let's keep going then.
Okay. All right, so the minutes from the 3/20/23, any questions or comments on those minutes?
You're good?
I'm good.
I'm good. You're good. Mayor Blackburn?
Mayor Blackburn's good. Thank you.
Okay. And Marlo's not on yet?
No.
Okay. All right. So we got enough though that it passes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. On the action items on the BO, just some updates on that real quick. We did have some good conversations last week. We had a meeting with NOAA and FHWA. It was Cindy Callahan, senior biologist with FHWA, and then Nancy Munn, who is one of the regional directors or assistant regional directors for NOAA. We also, Dennis sent us an email from ODOT. We have a new point of contact from ODOT, which is Rod Thompson, the state environmental engineer. So from that meeting, we're going to have recurring meetings with myself, Cindy, and Rod. So that'll have FHWA, the project, and ODOT senior level review once a month on the biological opinion and where that's at. We did get Cindy Callahan with FHWA also did send out a communications reminder to everyone on the proper channels of communication. So we reestablished those communication lines. And we were able to have a conversation with NOAA about just their review time. So you'll see on here that we're looking at for the VA to be resubmitted to them. So we finished all of our stuff. We submitted it to ODOT. ODOT is confirming that they don't have any additional comments. They will give it to FHWA, who then gives it to NOAA officially, and then they will continue their review with for the biological opinion. In that conversation, they talked about once they get that document from FHWA, that they were looking at about 90 days to finish up the BO and about 45 days for their legal review to get the signatures. It puts us at about 135 days. So I'm estimating about September 1st is what it's looking like on the month. I will give you updates monthly. My next monthly meeting is May 24th. We have one this Wednesday, and then May 24th is the next meeting with them. So I will keep you updated as we get input and progress on the biological. So that's where we are.
I think we've got to give this new communication entity a chance to succeed. But I think we've got to be ready to do some other things if we have to. Hopefully we don't.
No, and yeah, I think it's got a little bit of a different focus, and priority is recognized by everybody that this is a priority for the people that are working on it now. I don't know that it had that same focus previously, but you know, the proof will be in things happening and us seeing things move forward. So,
do we have an intermediate milestone, something that 2, 3, 4 weeks that we can tell whether it's working or not?
What I would say is that biological assessment paper that we sent to ODOT gets sent to Cindy, which then gets them everything they need to get started continuing to write the biological opinion. I would say if, you know, in 3 weeks we haven't heard that document has been sent to Cindy by that point, then we'll follow up again with that. there's either we should hear something back that they've got additional questions or that it has been sent to Cindy. If it takes more than 2 weeks, I'd be very surprised that took that long.
Okay, well, if you could,
We'll
brief us next time
We'll do.
how things are going.
Mayor, can you join us?
Oh, hi, Mayor. Good that you're here.
Hi guys, sorry, somehow my phone kept wanting to send me back to the 1 o'clock Teams, so now I'm on Zoom.
Hey, did you have any comments on the notes, meeting notes?
No,
Okay,
I don't.
okay. Mike, let's continue.
So on the GR update, Oregon, just that the Senate Bill 431, we have been asked last week from our lobbyist in Oregon to send letters of support for that Senate Bill 431. So we are putting those together. So expect to see emails flying around about trying to get letters of support this week. They would like to have them. We've got some draft language, and then in the middle is kind of a piece to put in there how the money and the project are specific to you. So how does it affect Klickitat County? How does it affect Hood River? They want to try to get as many of those together as we can. So you'll see us starting to email those out to everyone and looking for signatures.
What do they need?
We're hoping to have everything by this Friday. So we'll try to get them turned around as quick as we can. If you can't get it by this Friday, just as soon as you can get it, and we will package them up and get them down there. They said they want to overload them with as many letters of support as we can. They're also working with the labor unions in Oregon to get a letter of support from them to also support that. They said kind of how they did the similar thing when they did the Senate Bill 2017 to get the 5 million. They want to do a similar kind of call to action of all the local stuff.
Hey, do we want to get that information out into the full community so that they're hearing from constituents and people, not just our organizations?
I would say anybody, we are going to be reaching out to everyone that we did for like the appropriations. So we're going to go through One Gorge. We're going to reach out to all the, normal city ones that we do, but the transit agencies, everybody that we have a list that we've got letters of support for in the past. We're going to reach out and try to get them. So we should be able to get 20 or 30 letters at least.
Michael, can we also send that out? But the general port subscriber email, and I know the city has a subscriber email to get just what Marla said, regular constituents to also submit support.
Yeah, I think anything like that we're willing to do would be good to get support for the bill.
And the target is this week for if we do share those calls to action, or can people be calling and sending messages next week too?
Yeah, I would say if they can't do it this week, I wouldn't, I would continue to do it. If it's next week, then do it next week.
Okay.
Until they make a decision, I would say we need to keep this high on their list of.
Do we want to add anything in there about hoping that this goes from discretionary funds over to general bonding? And because, does anybody actually see it passing as the way it was written?
I did not get that from Dan and Katie. They gave us some of the draft language that they would like to see in it. I can ask them about that. That was not something that they indicated.
Let's stop here for a second. Commissioner Chapman, could you brief us on some discussions you've had recently on the Oregon side?
Well, I attended an event over the weekend that had some Oregon legislators at it, and the best I can say is that it sounds like they're pulling a seat up to the table, which is, or they're trying to pull a seat up to the table, which is exciting in that they're talking about real dollars from the Oregon side, which should make everyone happy.
And we get regular questions from Dan and Katie on the funding. We're at least once a week, they're asking for some clarification of what we're asking for. What's Washington doing? Can you tell me what Washington's doing? So we've been sending all of that information to them every time they ask. So there's a lot of conversation that seems to be happening right now around the Oregon side and trying to figure out what they want to do. So, okay, any other questions or comments on Oregon? So on the Washington side, in your packet, there's the Senate proposal and House proposal. What I understand is that this week, there should be updated budgets and then a what they call it, reconciliation conference at the end of this week, next week. So I think over the next 2 weeks, we'll see what comes out of the Washington side. As soon as we hear from that, the plan is to send that straight to Oregon and get that to them. We'll see where that goes. I think, Brad, I think I saw you on. Is there any updates from you?
No, I mean, I think, you do have two different budget versions, the House and the Senate. The Senate does move the funding forward to the next 3 bienniums, which is good. We're working to try and get that in the House. In the conversation I had with Representative Fye, who's the chair, he did ask what is happening with Oregon. So any sort of progress or clarity will be helpful there, just to reinforce. Right now, it's just going to be negotiations between the House and Senate on where things are at, and we'll be monitoring those closely.
Brad, is the House and the Senate pretty far away on a lot of things, or is this one of the few for them to have discussions on?
No, I mean, they're far apart. I wouldn't say that there's a ton of things that they're far apart on, but what they are far apart on are relatively big things, including like how much to do through state bonds and other things, which are actually pretty significant policy decisions. But this is one of the things where they are, there is a difference.
Okay. On the Washington or on the DC side, federal side, the appropriations have all been sent in. We've had a couple clarification things on the Washington side, but we're waiting to hear back on those. That was a total of 8 million divided up between the different congressional folks from Oregon and Washington, primarily for preliminary engineering right away and travel mitigation is what they were requests were for. We are planning another trip to DC. I think, and I just wanted to confirm that the preference is to go May 22nd, the week of May 22nd, or do we want to try to do something? We had originally talked April 24th, but I think recent conversations were more to move that after we hear more from the Washington and Oregon side. So we were looking more at the end of May.
And what he said is he thought it'd be good for us to go the beginning of the week, right? Rather than
that's what he said. So
we'd probably fly on a Sunday to be there Monday morning.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, or go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, fly in on Monday and then go Tuesday, Wednesday. So if there's a preference on that, probably easier to travel on Sunday. And
I think you get Hal to tell us what's the most effective dates and how can he pack the schedule.
Okay, the week of the 22nd works.
Where he doesn't go cross country 5 times during the day.
He
plans it out a little bit.
Be pretty warm, you can like.
Okay, so and it's myself, Commissioner Fox, Commissioner Anderson, and Mayor Keeper. Is that still who's planning to go?
That's a good start.
Okay, perfect. All right. Bridge Authority, we'll come back to that. The funding, finance, and tolling on the grant applications. The Safe Streets for All grant was released on the NOFO, which is the Notice of Funding Opportunity. That came out on March 30th. The applications are due July 10th. The available funding is 1.17 billion. They had about 177 million that they did not spend from last year's allocations to that program. There's 2 different types. There's a planning and demonstration grant. The planning and demonstration grants are from 100,000 to 10 million. And then there's an implementation grant, which is a 2.5 to 25. We will probably have to apply. Well, I know we'll have to apply for the planning and demonstration grants because you have to have a action plan in place before you can apply for the implementation. So I think we will update our application from last year and submit on an action plan.
So this is to get the bicycle paths up above Hood River down to the bridge?
No, not directly. This would be SS4A, which is the Safe Streets for All. This would just be to develop an action plan that would be a area looking at it from an aerial plan and developing a plan for the region. And there's an official action plan title and format that it has to follow.
But
That
the
we do not
content
have.
of it is to connect
It would
the
be,
trail
yeah.
through the bridge over to Washington, correct?
It would be all the connections. It would be getting up to White Salmon, getting over to Benjamin, getting over to Hood River. So it's kind of a higher level action plan for everybody in the area.
Okay.
And then that would go along with the RAISE grant that we applied for, which was also those connections with bike ped and transit. So those two would kind of go together to support developing a process that basically gets us a better handle around what we're planning to do, that we can then reference and use for any of future grants. And
Wait, Mike, if I could just say that there are two parts to this program, as Mike referenced. One is the action plan. It's called a planning grant, which gives you money to develop the action plan. And then there's implementation grants, which are up to $25 million, which are intended to fund the implementation of your action plan. So it's a two-step process. You have to have an action plan first, and then you can get money to actually implement the action plan. And in our case, that money could be applied to actually constructing or to that increment of the cost of our project, which is devoted to getting bicycle and pedestrian access.
Now, when you say access, could that be on the bridge?
Yes, yes.
To the bridge.
Yes. So there's about $54 million of that $520 million cost estimate that can be directly attributed to providing bicycle and pedestrian access on the bridge. In other words, you might reduce the cost of the bridge by $54 million if you weren't going to put bicycle and pedestrian access on it. And we would use or potentially use that implementation grant to help fund that incremental part of the cost.
Okay, I get that part of it. Where I'm a little fuzzy about is that the interconnections from the two bridge ends out into the community. If we're under the new Bi-State Bridge Authority, do we really have the ability to do that?
there are limits to how far away from the project we're going to be able to go.
Right.
And we will have to define those limits. So I don't think we will be able to go like all the way up to White Salmon.
Yeah, because the way I understand
It's
it,
outside the project limits.
No, that's probably right.
Yeah. Now,
Okay.
could we go down under the river and, tie to something along 14? Sure, we would be able to tie into 14 and do pieces along 14, but to go all the way up to like White Salmon, no, I don't think we would be able to qualify.
I think that, to me,
It'd be
it
outside.
falls outside of the jurisdiction of the
It would.
authority.
But there's some pretty complicated pieces about getting from the bridge abutment to the traffic circle on one side
Yeah,
and
right,
to even past the toll booth on the other side,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and that I can see falls into, but taking it all the way up to the south.
We're connecting with the existing system, and that system also may be needing further improvement, but you're connecting with the system.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
The multimodal and the BIP, they have not released the NOFOs. We expect those anytime here in early April for both of those, or at least for the MPDG, which is the multimodal project discretionary grants, which is your info, rural, and your mega. I would expect those to come out in the next 2 weeks, and then BIP will follow after that. That's in the summer of 23. The grant funding updates, we were able to get the submittal for ARPA in on Friday. I'll update the numbers. I didn't have it when I sent this out on Friday morning. But it was about 88,000 that we're submitting to ARPA. It's about total about 330,000 that we've billed against the ARPA grant of 5 million. So that leaves us with about 4.7, a little under 4.7 million left in the ARPA grant. We will be submitting the Washington grant invoices in the next week or two. So we'll have to update at the next meeting on the Washington grant. Currently, there was about 3.6 million left. And it was about $1 million that we submitted last month. So I'd say it'll be somewhere, what's that?
Last quarter.
Last quarter, sorry. And have you got any indication of where we are?
Yeah, we're right around 900 again this quarter.
Okay, so around another million, so we'll have about 2.6 million left in the Washington grant. And then we still have the full 5 million left in the bill grant. We haven't started billing against that one at all. So that leaves us what, 10, $11 million left.
How's the training going? Has Shanika gotten?
We've not gotten trained yet. So, still working on that. Any questions on the grants? Where we are there. All right, treaty MOAs. We had an email exchange with the Yakima Nation. They have our MOA. We're waiting on responses back from them. We have not gotten any comments yet from Yakima, either on the treaty MOA or the section 106 MOA.
So we were supposed to go up there last week, if I remember right, and it got canceled at the last minute because they were writing up their comments.
We have not gotten a reschedule of that one yet.
How can we gently nudge them to encourage them to send it to us?
Send us the comments.
Yeah.
We did last week. So we emailed them on the 20th. We gave it to them on the 28th of February. And then we emailed them on the 20th of March and asked them because they said it was 2 weeks from the time that we submitted it to them. So that was about the 2 week time period, a little more than a 2 week time period was
So we're
March
going on
20th.
almost 4 weeks now.
Yeah. So about all you can do is email and ask them where they are.
How about suggestion? How about if you offer, hey, let's have another meet and greet
We're working on that, setting up a follow-up meeting with them.
and try and push it for
Yep.
earlier than later, like next week,
Yep.
to see if we can't force something.
We'll reach out to them.
Okay.
Yeah, we're offering to meet every time we talk to them and trying to get something going. Nez Perce, I emailed with Amanda last week. They have a meeting coming up on April 18th. I'm waiting feedback to see if they need us at that meeting. If not, we also have a follow-up meeting on June 5th. We're waiting to confirm that with them. They have an election coming up in May where they're going to change out, I think, 3 of their members. So there'll be some change in leadership there. We'll probably have to go do another debrief in June and update them on that. But the Nez Perce do have the MOA. And Amanda said she's working through reviewing of that, but has to do these next couple meetings to get through there. So
Just remember our target was to finish all of this by the end.
yeah, well, I was getting there. I was going to do that at the end. Umatilla, we have a second meeting with Umatilla on the 5th of this month. So on Wednesday, we go to meet with them. We're going to try to advance that discussion to talk about how we come up with some of the numbers. So how the impacts are of the safety zone on their fishing and some thoughts we have on how to formulate those numbers. So hopefully we'll be able to advance that and move that discussion along. Warm Springs, and we did have a previous meeting with that. Last time we had the ice storm, we were on our way to see Umatilla and almost made it, and got a call that they had closed all their buildings, so we had to turn around and come back and reschedule the meeting. So that's this meeting that we're having in a few days. Same thing with Warm Springs, they had canceled on us. We have rescheduled that for April the 11th. And that will be an initial meeting with Warm Springs. We have not given them the MOA or had any preliminary meetings with Warm Springs. So on the schedules, you will see in the packet, there's updated schedules. We did bump those out. It's pushed out, I think, to July timeframe right now, using the same sequence we had, but trying to hit the dates. So waiting for Commissioner Anderson to say, I told you so. But we will.
Are we betting again on July?
Yes, I'll owe you another dinner. So, yeah, so we will continue to email them, reach out to them, and meet with them as often
Remember what our
quick as
real
we
goal
can.
is as we go in for this next grant to the feds, we want to be able to say the MOAs with the treaty tribes are behind us.
Yeah, we're working on it. So RBMC RFP, we're working through the RFP. We've met with WashDOT, ODOT, and FHWA on that. We've got recurring meetings with all three of them. The task leads are getting into their segments and writing up their pieces and segments of it. We're looking at a draft out for some type of review, looking at June, July timeframe, to have some rough drafts. It'll go to industry review. It'll also go to the Bi-State Working Group for your all's review too. And we're still pushing to try to get something on the street by the end of this year. So geotechnical, one of the key things there, we will start the in-water borings June 19th. And it'll be about 5 weeks to do those borings. So we will have some prep meetings with the port, also some of the local stakeholders here in the area, just prepping everybody that work's going to start, and letting them know that we'll be out in the water and coordinating with the marina folks. And
we're going to have JLA
will do
will be around do an article.
Yep, they'll do some articles. They've done some stuff already pre getting out there, but we also want to do some outreach meetings and stuff too, to make sure everybody's aware. It's going to be really the first time we're starting to put construction equipment out there while we're also in the middle of the recreation season. So we want to make sure that everybody's up to speed and understands that, you know, that's not a playground we're putting out in the middle of the water, an obstacle course. That, you know, we need to make sure that they're communicating to the users that they try to stay away from that stuff. So, and we'll monitor it. If we have to put enforcement out there, we'll put enforcement out there to make sure everybody's, you know, respecting
should we put
it. So.
And we got a little bit of time, but should we put some signage up out where the borders that to let them know, stay away from the bar?
We're going to meet with them. Daryl has a monthly meeting. I think she's going to get that scheduled tomorrow, or at least know what direction she's going tomorrow. The waterfront rec. Yeah. So we're going to meet with the waterfront rec committee and do a presentation to them, and we're coordinating with Daryl. She's got to go through some things tomorrow.
The key thing is safety.
Yeah. Yep. The permitting associated with the borings there's one deadline for one of the permits is April 25th. And then the other permit that we were waiting on, which was the right of entry permit on the Washington side, we should have that in the next 2 weeks. So we should have all permitting in place in plenty of time for all the boring stuff to take place. All right. So one other main item that we wanted to get through, one is at the port meeting last week, there was some discussions on making a recommendation to the port on the tolling increase.
Yeah, let me jump in and help you there. So during the last port meeting, we talked a little bit about, you know, the tolls, and what the port is really looking for is a recommendation from this body. What toll increase do we want? And right now, if we could, I'd like to separate this from the issue associated with weaning ourselves off the bridge tolls. Assume that that's going to happen, or this does not happen. So if we could just limit this to what do we want to do for a bridge toll increase this year? And then the second topic we're going to get into is the resolution on what do we do with the future bridge tolls and how we deal with that, if we could. So there was 3 options that we've studied a lot. 3 and 5 basically get you to the same numbers.
Let's call them scenario A and B, so we're talking about this.
Oh.
And did we have this to send to Marla so she's looking at it?
Yeah, I can email them to her. So what we're looking at is the two scenarios. The 2 scenarios that were in the Washington State Transportation Commission presentation. And it's the same exact scenarios that they had. So scenario A and scenario B, which mirrored, and we really want to just focus on the scenarios from now until the bridge opening. Those other discussions are for later bridge authority discussions. Right now, it's really focusing on which scenarios will get us the reserves that we need by 2030 and the bridge opening. And the reason for the reserves, just to remind everybody, is to set us up for TIFIA loans, and to give us a maximum loan capacity, I'll say, of $125 million, and have the reserves in place in order to be able to do that if needed, to go that route with the TIFIA loan. So the two scenarios on here that they had presented are the same scenarios that we had looked at, which we had called scenarios 3 and scenarios 5. One was, and just to remind everybody where they are, one was a 75-cent increase, so $1.75 in 24 for breeze by, and then a $3.50 cash toll. And then scenario B was a $2 breeze by with a $3 cash toll.
Again, both of these get you to the first milestone, which is roughly $15 million by the time we need to close a TIFIA loan.
That's right.
Somewhere around late 27, early 28. And then both of them get you to around 20 million, 21 million when the new bridge opens in total.
That's correct.
And did you want to talk about 4?
Yep. Just 1 second. Sorry, just trying to make sure they have this. And then there was a discussion we want to make sure we want to have or talk about was there was also scenario 4 that we had, which was not part of these scenarios, and we are not limited to the scenarios that the Transportation Commission did. This was just what we coordinated with them. We can choose to do something different. Was the doubling, which would be $2 and $4. Right now, if you look at scenario B, you're doubling the breeze by, but you're only increasing the cash by $1. This would be increasing the breeze by $1, doubling it, and then doubling the cash to $4, which in our scenarios gave us a little more cushion coming into the reserve accounts. And what that would end up doing is allowing us, if needed, some additional TIFIA capacity. If we get between now and the bridge opening and find out, things have gone well, we get the money we need, it just allows us then to reduce the amount of TIFIA loan and long-term debt that we would need to take if we went ahead and did that now, rather than some type of an increase at bridge opening. It would change the scenarios at the bridge opening. So that option, I think we should also talk about and see whether we wanted to do that option also.
You had some opinion on that the last time. Yeah.
On doing the 2-4.
Yeah.
I think I was the one that originally proposed option 5, which was the 2 to 3, so that we're creating, that separation.
What do you mean by that? What separation?
So I originally did $2 and $3. So it's a $1 for everybody who crosses the bridge, or technically every axle that crosses the bridge. And then that's something easy that we can go out and sell to the public, saying all this money is going into the reserve for the future, for the new bridge. It's going to stay in this reserve, and it's going to get us the money so that we can get a TIFIA loan for whatever we need, 15 to 20 million in cash. The $2 and $4, I was originally very, very hesitant on, because you would be going from $4 round trip to $8 round trip. You'd be doubling the cost of that round trip. While the 2 and 4 seem like the doubling, it also follows though what Washington does already for all their tolling, where your in-person or cash toll in essence is $2 more than whatever the toll rate is.
Don't most of their bridges have a one-way toll? I mean, a two-way toll. Are you tolling for a round trip? The $2 gap, is it for a one-way or a two-way?
It depends on which one it is. What they figured.
Bridges were 2 ways.
Well, it's toll roads and bridges. And so on a toll road, it's both ways.
Okay, right.
What it does is it's whatever it is, it's a $2 increase to cover the cost of the plate reader and sending out, you know, it just covers the cost plus your slippage.
Oh, no, I completely get that. I'm just, this is presuming we continue to toll each way.
Right.
Well, we probably would until the new bridge is in place, then we're gonna do, the new authority is gonna decide
Right.
what to do with that.
And
So all we're talking here is between now and when the new bridge opens.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. Just establishing the $2 spread on the one-way toll versus the $2 spread on two-way.
Makes a big difference.
Right.
Makes a big difference, but as long as, and so that because of that, and that being the case, you know, I think we need to raise it enough that Chairman Fye Chairman Fye and everybody else sees that the port is serious about this, and that we can show very clearly that we will have enough reserves on hand for the new bridge, for the TIFIA loans. And then while also ensuring that nobody up there who actually is making the decisions feel like we're purposely choosing the tourists and the out-of-towners to go after, when the state, the entire state is one that is funding a significant portion of this bridge. And so the state is already putting in their difference.
Right, I get that. So what you're saying is that we should really discuss scenario A or scenario C, where scenario C is the $2, $4.
Oh, I thought.
No,
I
I'm
thought
saying-
you just discounted that and it's either A or B.
No, I was saying it's either scenario B or our other number 4. I don't think the 75 cent for, you know, the breeze by while increasing $3 round trip on the rest of the people that in the state that's coming up with a significant amount of money is probably the right way to go.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that.
So scenario A,
What's on
it's-
scenario A? Yeah,
scenario A goes cash to $3.50 from $2.
right.
And so that increases on a round trip, because I think of round trips, that increases at $1.50 round trip for breeze by, and that increases at $3 round trip for all the rest of the state. And if I was Chairman Fye, I wouldn't like that very much.
But it's still less than $2 spread that you're talking about.
No, because you'd be at, right?
$3.
$1.75.
Hey, Mike, would it be helpful to pull up that page and share the screen from that presentation that just has those two scenarios? I know we're adding the C in as well, but I think it's a nice reference point to be able to see it.
And if I could interject, I think that, you know, we also have to take into consideration the amount of times that people cross the bridge. Do we want to protect the local who crosses the bridge multiple times a day? Or do we want to give a break to the tourist that's going to cross it once a summer?
So what does that argue for, Christy? Which are you leaning towards?
Well, I'm just thinking that maybe we try and, I like the idea of the breeze by only going up 75 cents because the majority of people that use breeze by are crossing that bridge multiple times a day.
I think the thing that
This
makes
is
me
Mayor
nervous.
Blackburn. I agree with Commissioner Chip.
I think Marlo's trying to speak.
Sorry, guys. That's okay. I can go next. I don't want to cut somebody else off.
This is Mayor Blackburn. I agree with the logic of Commissioner Chapman.
So to summarize, Commissioner Chapman, you think A is the selection?
I just think that we need to think about keeping the breeze by as low as possible for the users that use that bridge every day, multiple times a day. And yes, I understand that the impact goes heavier on non-breeze by and cash patient, or not patients, sorry, people. But we have to look at it as they're not using the bridge every day. They're using it a couple times a summer. They're using it, you know, for a week at a time, and then they're gone. And so I really want to be cognizant of the locals.
My only fear with A is if it's really only going to get us to 75 million, And if it does become a push to get the full funding picture that we're envisioning from both states, and then that full award at the federal level, are we setting ourselves up to be just below maybe the eventual number we need for financing? And then how would we handle that?
So just a reminder,
Let me jump in. What we're talking about is from now to the opening of the bridge.
Right. No, I get that. But at the bottom, so that estimated financial capacity is not alluding to what we can seek for funding?
This does not, this bottom part could go with either one, as well as this bottom part could go with either one. So B is not linked to B in the second part, and A is not linked to A in the second part.
Right.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you for clarifying. The version I have of this doesn't have that highlighted section. So that's helpful.
Yeah, so all we're doing is positioning ourselves for these first few years to make sure that we've got a reserve that allows us to go after a TIFIA loan. We're still going to have to fund the new bridge once the bridge opens, and we haven't set those tolls yet. That'll be the new authority. But both of these get us within reason of both of those options.
I guess, and I know we want to separate this, but it's a little tough to swallow, because seeing that the difference is a quarter, and back to the other element, which I do think is tied into this, about when the port is moving that first 50 cents over only to bridge, that's what we're talking about here.
Well, so I would just say that the toll increase isn't really linked to that, because the toll increase really needs, in my opinion, to happen whether there's a new bridge or not.
No, I agree, but I think it is worth expressing the sentiment that it's hard to think of these things completely separate when the difference is something less than the 50 cents that we've come back to, and is a number that is out there, whether it's a number that starts to go towards this project in 28 or a different year. And so if the goal, which everyone is expressing, is keeping this as low on the locals as possible, having some of that allocated towards the new bridge earlier allows us to keep it as low on the locals as possible for as long as possible. And I'll separate it. I can separate it and land on a decision. Maybe I'm on an island here, but it's kind of a tough mind game to not acknowledge that these things, we could be thinking about it differently.
Yeah, I tend to, I've been struggling. I know Commissioner Fox has asked us to separate them, and I completely understand why we're trying to do that, but it is hard. I'll just acknowledge that I'm not far from Mayor Kiefler in having that difficulty. I guess one way that I would suggest separating this in my mind, what we need the 50 cents to be reallocated so that it's available before the bridge is built, so it's available for maintaining the current bridge in an extraordinary situation, and then after the bridge is built, that it can be transferred into lowering the tolls, because it's basically a down payment towards the towards the loan, basically, that we ask for a less loan. So that's how I separate the two, Mayor Kiefler.
So let me see if I can. I've had a lot of discussion in the last 12 hours on the second subject. And one of the thoughts is there's no disagreement so far on the port's going to wean themselves off the bridge. There's no disagreement on that issue. There's been a lot of movement about whatever is left in the bridge repair fund, which is after the bridge weans themselves off. Anything from tolls goes into this bridge repair fund, other than the Delta tolls that we're talking about now, which goes into the replacement fund. Now that bridge repair fund is only to be used for repair on the current bridge
and replacement.
And at the end of its life, there has been a lot of movement that whatever is left in there moves over to the new bridge.
Yeah, so that's how I separate, that's how I'm able to go along with your request that we separate them, because we don't know what is going to happen between now and when the new bridge is built. So we don't know that that money will be available for this, for building this reserve. So what Mayor Kiefler is attempting to do with it, maybe it may be able to be used for that, but it may not be there.
I think where it's really going to be useful for us, or this new board, is the second discussion that we're going to have for FY31, setting those tolls. So if by chance there's a big pot of gold that's going to get transferred at the end of the project over to the new bridge, that pot of gold could be used in some shape to keep these step-up numbers lower.
Right.
But
yeah,
again,
I guess that's what's been my head generally too, Mike, is that we need to make a decision now about the increase needed currently. But my hope still would be that the funding picture does develop the way we envision, and the amount we need for TIFIA is less, and that eventual decision about whether an increase happens the minute the new bridge starts or when we start to get into that every 5 years, maybe depending on how well we can set this up, that is something that can change based on, be different than what we're presented now as a scenario. So in theory, perhaps whatever we're about to set could be a number that can hold into that new bridge opening and delay the next increase potentially.
Yeah, as an example, maybe there's enough money in that fund where we don't have to do the FY31 increase at all.
To me,
we don't know until we're going to get there.
To me, it all comes down to, how much do you want to front load and pay for not having to pay 3% plus interest for 30 years on something? You're taking away from today, you're putting it in a fund so that there's enough money there so that you can, knowing that the bridge repair and replacement fund may be zero, knowing that that's a possibility that's not there.
Well, and the other thing we got to be careful of is that we think a TIFIA loan of minimum $75 million, but the upper end of it could be much greater than that. We just don't know until we get into the project and how well the project gets run. But what we're trying to plan for is that if we don't get all the funding, or if there's overruns, the first pocket we're going to go to is what we've got set aside to fund that. So that's the TIFIA loan. It's the line of credit. Now, as long as we don't use it, we don't get charged for it. But we want the line of credit, I think, to be
as high
probably
as
125 to 140 million. And if we don't need it, great, we don't pay it back. And we have that money now to.
But if that's what we want to do, we need to raise the rates higher so that that's an option.
No,
today.
we don't need to. I think these
right?
two, 24 through 30, if we stay with those numbers, by the time we need to close the TIFIA loan, we'll have $15 million. 15 million should get us $150 million.
No. That's not right.
Discussion.
The numbers on the screen are what we should talk to.
And remember,
the 15 to 20 million
it was conservative.
We don't want to go down it's conservative, and it could be worse. It could be better.
Okay, I'll give you.
I would say 125 is what this will get us to until we learn more about where we are 7 years down the road.
Right.
Because we have no idea what the economy is going to do or anything else between now and then.
So if you feel kind of comfortable with 125 million TIFIA loan, these two toll rates here will get you there.
And the argument for option C?
Get you more.
It better prepares you for needing more than 125. So right now, best case scenario, if we got all the money we're asking for, we would still need 70 million. So we are at the very bottom of that with our best case scenario. If either state only gives us 100 million, or we only get 150 from the state, we're at the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So if you want any buffer in that, then option C provides you with that buffer. And really will put you in a position where in 2031, you could make a different decision or know better where you are. And then you can make a decision at that point. That money still all goes towards the bridge and you have it there, right? It's not lost money, and it's money saved on interest that, you know, Jake talked about. It's, you know, extra money you're not paying interest on long term.
So,
Hey,
So,
Mike.
Go ahead, Marla.
I have a question. I know this has come up in some of our discussions, but this decision and our recommendation is really in the landing with the port. But when we thought long-term about these tolls, ideas have come up around for frequent users. So once you hit X amount of round trips in a week, you no longer are getting charged. Those types of hopefully like offsets for local residents. Is that something that we could be also asking the port to look into, or do we have an insight of if this is something that they're open to exploring for this period between now and the new bridge?
Let me ask a question. Does the current technology allow you to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. That is not a difficult thing to implement if you wanted to do that. And I will say that the Washington State Transportation Commission has asked the traffic and revenue team to look into the impact of two different scenarios, one of which is a reduced rate for low income people, the other one of which is a discount, not necessarily no toll, but a discount after a certain number of trips. And so they'll be modeling that, and we will be able to, using their model, plug some numbers in.
Carrie, I understand your model and I get that totally. What I'm after is we've got a system in place now on the current bridge. Will it allow us to do that?
Yes,
Really,
it will have to be modified and programmed to do that. But yes, it can be modified to do that.
So I'm strongly in support of that, because again, if what we've got to go out into the community and say with this increase is this increase solely goes to the new bridge, then now you're getting down to a household level. So once you've done 10 round trips in a week, you've done your share. That household has contributed, and they should not anymore, you know, and maybe it's reverting back to the existing toll or something. But I do think there's value in considering that, because I think that more strongly than whether it's $1.75 or $2 sends a message to the local residents that we're aware of how critical this bridge is to some household lifestyles, and we're not expecting them to carry a bigger burden out of a necessity of more frequent trips.
Okay, so can the system, you know, we're talking about two tolls here, if you will. You got the base toll that's going to the port, and you got this incremental increase that's going to the new bridge. Okay. If the person goes across it, or the car goes across it 10 times in a week, can you forgive just the toll increase, or can you do that?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our current
Yes.
system will allow you to do that with minimal changes.
It only applies to breeze by tolls. You cannot do that with cash tolls.
Right.
Okay.
It's just a programming.
It's just programming.
I just want to make sure.
Just program.
Well, we'll get you a quote for that.
Okay, so from the bi-state, do we all feel that the incremental increase, whichever scenario we select, A or B, if we have a breeze by user that uses it more than 10, those trips are not charged the incremental or the entire amount?
No, you can't give it away for free.
Okay, so then it's the incremental.
Yeah, I would say it drops back. Like after you hit so many, you go back to what it is currently, or definitely a reduction.
I would caution you, though, that will have potentially
huge impact,
some impact on the revenue, and it will have impact on what those reserve numbers are at 2030. We've assumed that every vehicle that crosses the bridge is going to pay the full toll. I have no idea, and I'm not even sure how you would start to model. At present, we don't know how many people travel the bridge more than 10 times in a week.
Is that something that we can look up with our software? Look at a plate and look at their accounts and see where they're at? That might answer all of our questions.
I mean,
We
that
can find that out by transponders, because every
You
transponder
can track
is
it.
recorded when it goes across.
Okay, could we do this? Because I'm trying to push this along.
So that,
Can we reach an agreement? And I'm just gonna say scenario B as our choice, with the caveat that the port is gonna look at what would be the impact if you go the breeze by greater than 10, what will that have an impact on our 15 and $20 million range down here?
I think it might be easier instead of a weekly trip count to look at whatever we decide to be the monthly trip count.
can we,
Oh, that's a good point.
we break this into 2 decisions just because we're looking to move some things forward and it's gonna cost money to wait another month to get to another decision?
Mr. Chairman, I guess if I were to make a motion, it would be simply that it is the bi-state working group's opinion that scenario B be the direction that we move, and that we would also ask that staff looks into a frequent user discount on a monthly basis. And that'd be it. We'll let them look into it.
So we would say 40 one-way trips per month.
Whatever
fair?
we come up with, Carrie, let's talk about that.
That's up to staff.
Let's
to figure
figure
it
that
out.
out. Let's.
Okay, so the staff will bring it back to us.
Because if it's at 40 a month, you might not even get any money into your darn account.
Well, but that's 10 per
Carrie,
week times.
Carrie, we can bring back some options. Let's leave it at this. Let's bring back options. I don't want to what if this for the next, we don't have enough information to do that. So let's.
I would also say that the rest of the money should be coming out of the 50 cents that the port gets already.
The rest of what money?
So whatever that frequent user discount should come off the first 50 cents on the bridge shouldn't be coming off of this. This money, the dollar, so I always think about it, $1 for every time you go across the bridge is going straight into the new bridge.
Way to tie the 2 discussions together. So I really like to hear Mayor Keithler and Mayor Blackburn had both supported scenario A. So I'd sure like to hear what they think about this proposal.
I'm good with that as a general idea. I'm eager to talk about the 2028 port weaning date as a way to access surplus funds and make sure we have enough when we need them. It sounds like we're going to talk about that next.
Yes.
I'm fine with this at this time.
Okay, so you're okay with scenario B. Marla, your thoughts?
Yes, I am too. I mean, especially with this conversation around a reduction, you know, it's tough to be supporting something that is going to be a higher per trip cost. But I think that when you dig into potential scenarios down the road, it's more responsible for us to be going. And also there are some benefits, I think, to the messaging out of something easy for people to wrap their heads around, $1 across the board. So I would support B.
Okay, could you restate that motion again?
I would move that hopefully the unanimous support of the bi-state working group would move with scenario B to be the recommendation of bi-state working group, with the ask that port staff look into a frequent user discount, where that discount would come off of the any potential discount would come out of the first 50 cents that the port brings. So that no matter what, $1 for every time you cross the bridge is going towards the new bridge.
Okay.
So obviously, or maybe not obviously, we're not going to be doing, or the port will not be doing anything that hasn't been modeled. So there will be a model done, and we'll understand the impact on the numbers. How can the impact be anything other than not getting us to the 15 to 20 million?
Well, this way, if we follow what I just said, you're guaranteed to get there.
Right. Well, because you're getting off of the weaning process.
Right. Anything from the frequent user discount comes off as the wean comes off.
Yeah, but see, here's the problem with that, because I thought that the weaning process was going into the Thank you. The repair fund, not the replacement fund. The replacement fund, we have to have some money in the replacement fund to qualify for the TIF field.
There
So that's what
is,
this is.
so this is the Bi-State Bridge Authorities Fund, the dollar, everything goes into that.
Right.
Then you have the Bridge Repair and Replacement Fund, which should be, I would hope from the port, a one-way direction that only goes in and it only comes out for the bridge for repairs or replacement.
Right.
And then you have all the rest of the money that comes in. And so what I'm saying is that our recommendation is that anything that's a frequent user discount would come out of that everything else pile.
I get that. So they're reducing the potential for money left at the end, which could be
correct.
Going towards reducing the amount that we go for that we've already picked yet.
Correct.
That's right.
I know. I would say that's coming out of the everything else. It's not coming out of the bridge repair because there was an ordinance passed that so much money goes into the bridge repair and replacement account.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And that's set, and that money's been going in there. So that's an enterprise fund, and then you've got the dollar that would go into the fund by that group. You have all the other dollars that's general fund dollars.
Right.
Our recommendation is that any program that's created that's a we're trying to help the locals, the high rate users, comes out of that everything else fund.
I understand this. So that's the first 50 cents, basically. I get that, but I've already been presuming that first 50 cents was if there was anything left at the end that was going to be reducing our TIF load.
If they wean it and they move everything to the repair and replacement account of some sort, right?
I'm sorry, say again.
If the port weans themselves off, all the money that's going everywhere else would then be going into the repair and replacement account.
Right. Repair or replacement.
Repair and replacement.
There are two separate funds.
Well, he's saying one is called repair and replacement, the other is replacement. Because one's controlled by the
right now. So there's a repair fund and there's a replacement fund in this existing year
that you guys already have. Is that how you've been?
Yeah, my understanding.
Yeah,
Debbie,
that is correct.
So how much is in your replacement account?
The replacement fund has all the grants and everything that's very specific to replacement.
That's just that there's our fiscal agent, so that's where they put the money.
You can go check in that big matrix that you presented.
Right. So that's but that's so your 2018 increase, right? Mm-hmm. That all went into the repair and replacement account, correct?
Originally, and then it was split last year.
So it's all going into repair now, all that increase?
Most of that is in the repair side. There is some in the replacement side.
How much is it, the 35,000?
Well, the way I read that was there were transfers from the revenue fund to front load the grant work.
Yes, and there's also expenditures in the replacement fund that are not eligible for grants. So those have to be covered by tolls.
So there's about 1.2, I want to say, that's in that replacement fund that were transfers into front to pay for all the work before the grants came in.
And so is that going to get transferred back out, or is that you?
I anticipate that will stay, assuming what the commission wants to do, that'll stay in the replacement fund. But it's a nuance because what it's theoretically it should loan where it came back.
You originally though, but it still came out of the repair and replacement account.
Originally,
correct. Right. How much is in the repair fund right now? Is that for 2?
Is that about 3?
Yeah. Well, it started the year with about 3 million. And that one actually does get. So I kind of wanted to clarify because when you talk about that 50 cents, part of that 50 cents already the repairs on that bridge average more than what the 2011 and the 2018 increases were. So part of that 50 cents does already go towards repairs on that bridge. It is less than 50 cents that the port is keeping for other things. Because part of that does already go towards repairs on that bridge on average.
So you're not pulling repairs out just out of the repair account?
All repairs come out of the repair account. But the amount of money that's required for that is more than just the 2011 and the 2018 increases.
So they put more money into the repair fund than
what the increases were.
Than what the increases were, correct. Part of that original 50 cents per trip goes into that repair fund as well already. The 50 cents per trip generates a little over 2 million a year. And the port on average over the last 5 years has used about 900,000 of that for, you know, improvements at the airport or to subsidize the event site, those kinds of things. The non-bridge expenditures has averaged about 900,000 a year over the last 5 years. What's that?
Well, that's good. It's a lot better than the 3.5.
Because that just take into account things like capital needs and those types of things. So I mean, that can be up and down.
These are not the same numbers we heard about a month ago, but we know that Debbie's been working on those.
Yeah, right. No, it's great to have Debbie working on those, because when we go out for this, it's going to have to be. We need to know exactly how you tie it back. I mean, at this point, you know, it's still, I think, all of our opinion that the money on the bridge needs to either go to repairing the bridge or going towards the new bridge. And that's what I think the community would like and wants. And we all are public servants serving the community. And we know that it goes towards parks and everything else, and that there should be a weaning off of that as quickly as possible for those capital.
That's the next discussion.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so I think, you know, my statement is I'd like to see a dollar from every single trip going into this fund.
Into the replacement.
Into the replacement fund that's held by the new bi-state bridges.
Yes.
So if we implement scenario B, and 100% of that increase to scenario B goes into the dedicated replacement fund, that gets you your dollar.
That's held by,
and it's held by the
state
authority.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's his motion. So you have a motion.
Okay.
I will second his motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Or any discussion?
Any discussion?
We do this a lot.
Any discussion?
I just have one question to bring up. Is it possible to have, and I understand what Commissioner Anderson is saying, and I agree with it. Before we make a recommendation, is it possible for us to make it a little bit more vague on the second aspect of these discounted trips, allocating where those funds go until we do have more information on where is that 50 cents actually going? Because if we're going to skim off the 50 cents back to the new bridge, are we going to be shooting ourselves in the foot by pulling it away from funds that we've been actually using to repair the existing bridge?
Well, if both of those are happening with that money, I think that his proposal was sufficiently vague that leaves the room open for staff to provide better information from which the Port Commission can then make the final decision. So
okay, as long as that's the case.
I'm not trying to get more vague.
I can add words to it, but it is probably going to get less vague.
Yeah.
And more confusing.
The intent is, we all understand what Jake intended. And I think that can be communicated. Kevin,
so I mean, I get at the end of the day, what I heard was the bi-state working group wants $1 of every crossing to go into the replacement fund, not the repair fund.
Into the replacement fund held by the new bi-state bridge authority.
Right. And then we would like the port to investigate a reduction of the toll or decrease and increase of the toll for heavy users, with that money described as impacting the non-new bridge, non-old bridge part of the toll.
But
we don't know what the numbers are, so.
Can we get one clarification that the study on the discount should be for cars only?
I would say yes.
Sounds like a good question.
It has to be, yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Like passenger cars.
That's where most.
Yeah, I mean, two,
Yeah,
you know,
that's-
pickups and cars,
Yeah,
not
like
trucks.
passenger vehicles.
Passenger cars.
I mean,
Okay, thank you.
So Marla
to
or Mayor Blackburn, do you have thoughts?
I'm good with that. I support motion.
Okay, Marla? How about yourself?
Same. I'm
Okay.
good with what's been discussed.
Okay, and I'm fine with scenario B as well. And the motion that that was made, so we can consider it passed, and that'll be our recommendation to the port tomorrow. Now we move on to this next piece. Does Marla have this? And
it got sent in an email, right?
I sent it out in an email to
Okay.
everyone.
We got this morning.
Okay, so Mayor Blackburn, Mayor Tiefler, if you could pull up out of the email this morning, the resolution 2223-11.
Thank you. I'm doing that.
Okay, you've all had time to take a look at it.
Uh-oh.
If just by
Mike's going
chance,
to the whiteboard. This is dangerous.
if by chance, does anybody have any comments on it, or are you ready to vote for it as is?
I love your humor.
Okay, so let's start. I'm up on the board here, and what I'd like to do is identify critical failures or critical concerns with the document as it is.
So number one is the lack of any specificity about reduction between now and the date certain. And number two is the date certain being rather far out. As in when we expect to have a new bridge online.
Are you talking about like annual decreases amount?
Yeah,
Decrease
so
amounts?
number one is there's no specificity on the step down.
Okay, so how about others? Jake?
I'm gonna let others start speaking.
Mayor Blackburn.
No, it's the same concern that Arthur has described.
Okay, any additional ones?
Not at this time.
Okay, Mayor Kiefler.
Same. I mean, those are the two chief concerns. I don't think we need to add more, or I don't have any more to add.
Okay, so this says that the port will be totally weaned off of the bridge by, where's the date on it?
June 30, 28.
Down at the bottom,
little paragraph.
right above the signature.
Yeah, by June 30th, 2028, which is
5 years.
that's fiscal year
27,
28.
28, 29.
27, 28.
27, 28.
What's the last diversion is in the year 27, 28.
Yes.
324. 425.
5 years.
Okay, so it's 5 years out.
And we know where we were before. It was Mayor Hewitt wanted 0. I wanted 2, you wanted 2, Jake suggested 3, and I forget where Marla was. So that's my recollection.
So Marla, where we you said now, Mayor Blackburn, what's your feel?
I wanted 2 or 3. 2 felt aggressive. 5 feels far too long.
Agreed. I think we were all consistent with 3 feeling like a place that we could all compromise on.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, what I say is, Jake convinced me to go to 3, and I wasn't comfortable going farther than 3. It doesn't sound like any of us are comfortable with farther than 3. So I feel like we started with our bottom line, didn't leave room to negotiate. And it feels like we're suddenly entering a negotiation. So I'd say if we're negotiating, I'm back to 0 because I want to settle on 3. So
yeah,
but you get it.
Yeah. Okay, so if this thing was acceptable to us, in other words, and we need the date, does everybody agree with by the end of 25-26, which is 3 years from now, they're off the bridge? In other words, any bridge tolls that come in either go to the replacement if it's the delta increase, or it goes to the bridge repair replace fund.
Right.
Is everybody okay with that? One yes.
That was my original
I'm okay with that, and I acknowledge that's a very, very dramatic decrease in use of revenue. I mean, anybody say take a third of your budget off this year and do it again next year. That's a lot.
So we haven't discussed the step down yet.
So let's, okay. And Marla, you're okay with the end of 25-26, 3 years out?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because I know that Port staff met extensively, and I know that obviously the Port wants to be conservative, and I know that Debbie is new and is taking on a lot. So I guess my question is Kevin and Debbie, do you feel like this is an attainable date, knowing the entanglement of finances that you're working on now, the new software system that is being implemented now? Is this an attainable date? Or I just want to make sure before
Christy,
people
thank you.
Tell us what we need to do.
I guess I'm actually more concerned about the percent decreases, because theoretically, if you had a 75% decrease in the first year, that was one of the sources that we were going to be using, as far as the 50 cents for getting our software.
Yeah, so I would make a proposal, and this is what I think we've had this in writing before. 0% in the first year because you're budgeting there, and it seems a little unreasonable to change your budgeting this year. 50% next year, and 75% the following year. So 0, 50, 75.
So my proposal would be, if we are making such an aggressive stance to say we're off, then I sort of feel like we should let the Port decide what's going to be the best way for us to get off of the tolls, and reporting back to the bi-state group of how we're, the steps that we're taking for that. I mean, that's a really aggressive amount, and I want to make sure that our staff feels comfortable saying we're going to have these massive cuts in the next 2 years. I mean, I don't know. I would love to have a compromise of, yes, maybe we can agree to the 3-year term, and maybe let the Port figure out what's the best way to show these reductions.
Okay, I got that one on the board. Marla, your thoughts?
Nothing new to add. I mean, I definitely appreciate Christy's input, and I think that is a valid thing for us to consider. I mean, we're trying to compromise here. And so I think back to the bi-state working group, if we had to choose between those two items, like an earlier off date or insisting on phased weaning, could we determine one of those being more important than the other?
Okay.
This is Paul.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it. I'm looking at it in my head. There are 3 fiscal years we're talking about.
Yep.
The one that starts in 2.5 months, and then the 2 after that. it doesn't matter to me when the cuts come. I just do want it to be zero by the end of the third.
Okay. Okay, so Fox's opinion, I believe we ought to hold the port accountable for 3 years out. They're totally off the bridge. Let them do their job to figure out how they're going to get there. But at the end of each year, they ought to report where are they in this journey. And they actually ought to have a plan as part of the budgeting process of your targets to get down there. But how you do it, it's up to you.
Can I ask you a question as a port commissioner? Are you really comfortable going full speed ahead for 3 years and then shutting off?
Yes.
Explain how that works. Or why you're comfortable.
There's a little bit of intuition here based on a lot of years of experience. I think on the plus side, we got Debbie on board now, so we're going to have a lot more transparency to not only to the commissioners, but to the staff. Okay, the staff's going to know where they are for probably the first time in many, many, many years. Okay, so that's a huge plus having Debbie here. I think it's a huge plus that I believe we've got the Port Commission support for bringing in this new software that we've needed for a long, long time. So that's a positive. Now where it gets a little squishy. I know where we are on various projects around the port. I think a number of those projects are going to have to go on hold because of the concept that we're putting into place now, realizing that the bridge is really actually going away, is going to force us to use more grant applications and grant money with less out of our own pocket kind of money to build things. Do that's going to cause us to slide things out greatly. I think the port is looking at different organizational structures to meet the support of the need of the community. And I can cite some examples like the recreational area and so on. So I see some positive signs there. The last one that gets really goosey, but it's based on my gut and feel, is I've seen it over and over and over again. When you ask a group of employees, how do they feel about a certain date? And they all come back, yes, I'm comfortable with that. That tells me right there, it's probably too long. You want to put a little bit of tension into the system, not enough tension that people are going to quit and leave, but you want to have a little bit of tension that keeps people's attention on the operation to continue to find ways of meeting the new requirements.
So I think those are all good points.
I feel pretty comfortable.
I think those are all good points. The counterpoint is that this is a resolution which is not perfectly binding. It's stating current policy. By 3 years from now, we could have an entirely different commission in place. We will have received no down payment on this before a fiscal year during which an entirely new commission may be in place. So in other words, your commission, your current commission, is not committing to do anything with regards to this in its tenure. You're making a commitment for the future for a future commission. And I'm a little uncomfortable with that. You see the point.
And I recognize that and I appreciate it. I'm not
Arthur, I appreciate that point. It's a good one. And actually, that's another reason why to make it a 3 year instead of 5. Because I'll still be on the commission.
Yeah,
unless there's a massive write-in.
I agree with you that you said massive what?
I said unless there's a massive write-in campaign against me, but
so
I mean,
I'm canceling the write-in campaign, Christy.
Thank you. But I actually think that's a really valid point as another reason to keep the date shorter so that we're not reliant on another commission or potentially another commission to have to cut themselves off of the bridge.
Go ahead.
So I think of this in terms of, you know, while this is a policy decision, we're all about to we just did stick our necks out on the line to double the rate of the current toll bridge. And this is a marriage. And the 3 years, why I think that's, you know, about as fair as you could ever ask for to the port. I think that right now, thank you so much for saying it's 900,000, not 3.5 million, because good luck ever getting elected again for any of us if we're going to say we're going to give them 3 years of moving $3.5 million off the bridge while you doubled my toll rate. I think the death threats will come after that statement. But even at the 900,000, you know, this is one of those few things where Marla with the city or the county, we have these enterprise funds. And in your own findings of fact in here, it says that there's a current capital maintenance plan that anticipates $90 million in costs over the next 15 years. Of that $90 million in costs over the next 15 years, the port currently has $14 million in cash and reserves. If you were asking me from the point of a fiscal and finance manager of a county, I would say, thank you to your bi-state working group and the Bridge Authority if you can get rid of my $90 million liability on top of my $30 to $50 million liability just to remove that $90 million liability at some point. If anything, I would say that it not be a resolution, but by 2026 that the bridge be and write it up as an ordinance or however you do it in Oregon, that the bridge become a enterprise fund. And by making it an enterprise fund, all the dollars has to stay with it. You can do a loan out of it, but it has to be paid back because it's an enterprise fund. And that's how we do it at the county, because we've got a wastewater treatment plant. I can't use money off the wastewater treatment plant to go do something somewhere else. Unless
well, just your people who know how to do that.
Okay, so there's a few ways around things, but that's besides the point. But you're still not allowed to, for the most part. You can't. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's morally wrong in all essences of the word. And so I could get behind that, saying 3 years you're cut off, but I'm also on the other side saying if the port, sorry, not we, if the port does this, you know, multi, you know, buy down, so it's not $2, it's $1.75 after 10 or $1.50 after 10. That should be coming out of the 900,000 that the port is currently moving to other things, whether it's for financial software or something else, or it's for, that all comes out of that pot of money. And I think it's a fair statement, because the port's job is to manage the ports. Our job is to create funds for the new bridge. And I think if the port accepts that, that creates funds for the new bridge. The bi-state working group's done its part. We're setting the new bridge up for success while also still assuming all the liabilities of the current bridge on the teardown. But again, that's the port's discussion on, you know, how they do that.
So you're okay with no specifics on the phase down, but you want to see an ordinance?
Am I okay with it? Absolutely not. How do you have a $90 million liability and aren't shoving every bit into that repair and replace?
That's why I couldn't follow up what you were just saying.
I mean, am I okay with it? Absolutely not. But in the object of fairness, the only thing my job as a member of this is to create funding for the new bridge that keeps the new bridge as low as possible. That's our job. I think our recommendation can be, we would like to see 50% in the first year. That would be a recommendation. But I think the only thing that we can truly say is that as long as we're getting $1, we're setting that new bridge up. who knows, they could come into massive problems next year and have to take out a huge loan and raise the toll again in order to pay for those problems. That's the port's issue.
So I guess I would suggest two things. One is that we make a recommendation that there is a reduction 50%. Obviously, writing that down already. Oh, no. So making a recommendation that in year 24-25 is a 50% reduction. And number two, I would like to see a statement that is the policy of the Port Commission that their highest priority is to see a new bridge built and to see the toll on that new bridge as low as possible. And that if that were Port Commission policy, I would feel much better that we're all on the same page.
I mean, speaking for myself and not from the Port Commission, but as a commissioner, I mean, I believe that is my intention, is bridge is #1 priority. I just want to make sure that our staff has the available time to not let everything else go into despair because we've just dropped it all. And so, you know, like I said, untangling the finances, that's going to take some time. Implementing a new software system, that's going to take some time. And at the same time, we should be funneling some of the bridge money into reserves and then working towards how quickly we can get ourselves off the bridge. I don't think that there's any disagreement. I just think that nobody wants to say it's 50% this year, 70% this year, and then we're done. I think that's the goal, but I don't want to put that kind of stress and pressure on the staff because I really don't want to lose Debbie.
Well, I don't either. Thank everybody. Thank you, everybody. I really, I actually feel like I'm not worthy.
So
thank you,
Christy, with that statement, putting money off the bridge into port reserves, to me, that's a hard pill to swallow. So of that $14 million that the port is currently sitting on, which is a very healthy balance sheet for your revenues that you bring in a year, at least from what I've seen in local.
Well, that didn't come in a single year.
I know, but that's built up reserves. But of those reserves, how much of that reserve came off the current bridge?
Going back into every year of accumulation.
I mean, of all your other areas, how many of those make money?
Well, we've got our commercial property.
The commercial property brings in revenue.
And our marina makes a little bit. That doesn't take into account fully capital outlay. But operationally, those are the two other main.
And how much and what do you net on those two a year?
Oh, I want to say that the commercial, well, the industrial properties were right under 900,000. And then the
last year.
Is that revenue or net?
Net.
That's net.
And then the marina was about 45,000.
Something like that.
But then we also had two other property areas that were losers, including the lot 1. Lot 1 is the waterfront industrial is at a loss. And then our commercial property is at a loss, which is the structures right on the south side of the marina.
But I would say at least 90% of that has come from the bridge. Right. Over time.
And Jacob, let me clarify a little bit. When I say build a reserve, I'm referencing the document that Mike Fox, Mike, did you circulate that to the bi-state group?
Yeah.
And that's kind of his way of saying, you know, if we have this first year and we kind of build a small reserve so that we can apply it to these different agencies, that will really help us to say, okay, we're off the bridge. We've got these reserves for these different agencies. And now we can say, you know, and hopefully we'll have a better understanding of our cash flow from the different airport, marina, et cetera. And so then we can literally look at it and say, you know, this is profitable, this is kind of not, so you're gonna have to dip into your reserves for the next year, and you have 2 more years to get yourself out of this. Otherwise, we've got problems. And so I think that, so maybe reserve is not the best word. It's maybe like a safety net. I'm not sure, but I was referencing Mike's document.
And staff is incorporating those splits that you offered up. And I want to say about 7.5 million was going into bridge operations. So keep in mind that within that revenue fund, there's the bridge operation department, which is all the toll takers and our, you know, front of the house. So we do have, that's where you had your balance. There was a little bit put into the marina, airport, throughout the entire system, but I want to say about half of that, if not more, was into bridge ops.
Yeah. Personally, if we use some application like that from day one, even though the commitment may be by 3 years out, we're done. It certainly gives the port the ability to work hard in that direction. It gives others like us the chance to look into the report to see if it's working or not.
Well, I would just tell the Port Commission that, you know, that takes away any real capital that the port would have to develop, certainly on lot 1.
No, I disagree. And the reason why I say that is that white paper gives the ability to the Port Commission that if there's an outstanding opportunity, they can move funds around for that, but they're going to have to figure out how to replenish it. But it's the new world. You don't have, you know, the cash cow anymore. You're going to have to pace capital development based on the ability to get grants and the 10 to 20% that we have to kick in. It's a new world.
Well, and to do that in 3 years, some of these grant applications take multiple efforts to resubmit. But I mean, I understand where you're coming from on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the other thing too is just that, you know, lot 1 costs a lot, has cost this port a lot of money over the years. And
you've invested.
Is the bridge more important?
Yes. Well, I guess where I'm saying is I'm not necessarily advocating for lot 1 over the bridge or anything like that, but one option that's available to the port is simply to sell lot 1.
Well, I personally think that's something that the commission ought to consider.
But those are the types of things and the analysis that need to take place in the next year, in addition to everything else that we're doing to keep the daily operations afloat. And that's why, frankly, I think it's going to take 1 year just to sort through everything and get the software all implemented to fully analyze that. Can some of that stuff start now? Absolutely. But to really come out of that and making good recommendations to the Port Commission.
So let's play a what if here. Let's say that we all push and we say by the end of the 3rd year, we want to be off. Okay, and the port has weaned themselves off and they're off and running. Let's say that something happened catastrophic that it's not going to work. Okay. Does the port have the ability to come back to, at that time, it's probably going to be the new bridge authority and ask for consideration?
I mean, do you want a bridge or do you want an airport?
Oh, I think
isn't that what comes
there ought to be a discussion, and I personally can't envision such a discussion, but it could.
I don't think the bridge authority would even have the authority to do that. The bridge authority can't give money to other entities to do other things.
Can I just make a starter? You know, one of the things that one of the biggest expenses to the port is running the parks. You know, and that's not going to be an area that's going to be a big revenue generator.
Never will.
You know, and so that is, you know, we got, and for our commercial properties, a lot of the tenants are going to say, hey, you know, there's an expectation that the cash reserves that are being generated off the buildings, guess what? That should be set aside for the replacement of the roof, the windows and HVAC systems within those buildings. So the one thing that would be hugely helpful is if there was some type of levy for parks. I mean, that is an option, that the port could entertain, is looking at something like that, people have come to love the parks and the Waterfront Event Center. That would obviously take a huge amount of heat off of what is really difficult to be a revenue generator when we make less than $100,000 totally on standing property tax.
So if you stated that your goal was to ask for an operating levy to do the things that you're currently doing with bridge tolls, I would say, great idea, let the voters decide. And then voters would decide, do they want to fund that or not? If the answer is no, then they don't want to fund it, then those things are done. I don't understand how we're putting in this discussion, every consideration that is being described is putting something else ahead of the bridge.
Well, the new bridge is going to be providing a brand new asset to the community that includes a bike pedestrian facility. I think very few people are going to think that the parks are an equivalent to the bike ped facility. Because
you're going to think it's worth a lot more.
Because the tolls that are backfilling parks theoretically are going to be going into the new bridge. The tolls that have been backfilling Parks and Rec won't be there anymore. They'll be going into the new bridge.
Yeah. So the decision will be, do we shut it down? Or do we find a mechanism to keep funding going? And if the public says,
district already,
I don't want to raise,
we're not part of it.
I don't want to raise, I don't want the park, stop the park.
So I agree that it sounds like we're trying to put other things in front of it, where from my perspective, that's not our job. While it's nice to be in Oregon and deal with your problems, it's not our job. I think the simple thing is that by 26, that bridge should be an enterprise fund for the very simple purpose that if we don't get the federal funds, this bridge doesn't get built. Okay, it doesn't.
You have this liability,
and you're sitting on this liability to remove it or this liability to maintain it. Either way, it's this massive liability. And by 26, we will know where that sits, whether it's getting tore down in 3 years or tore down sometime in the future. And the port's going to have to make these very difficult decisions. I think from my perspective, what I need to know is that at that point, that is going to be its own enterprise fund, and that it's going to either be going towards the $90 million or it's going to be going towards the repair and replacement account or whatever. And I think that's probably what the community needs to know as well. I don't think anybody wants to close the parks down next year because you don't have the money to do it. You've got the cash on hand. I think you're sitting in a very good spot amongst a lot of other junior taxing districts that don't have the cash reserve that you do to have the time to make decisions. And I think that's setting you up for success, whatever the port may or may not become after that. But I think what it really comes down to is that by 26, that it needs to be an enterprise fund, so that when you look at, as you said, you guys do it this weird way that there's the bridge operations and maintenance and all that, and that's part of the general fund. And so you've got all these things that works together. All the costs, all the revenue and the cost should be being accounted for that fund and that asset. Because if it doesn't get built, then, and we know that there's going to be no new bridge, and say you're going to have to keep that thing going for 30 or 40 years. The Bi-State Bridge Authority can dissolve and transfer those dollars to the bridge for that repair, for that TIFIA loan, in essence, for what you're going to have to do for the $90 million in repairs. And I think anybody serving on it's going to be totally happy to get rid of that.
And at that point, no one's going to be talking about the waterfront park or anything else. you're gonna be talking about how do we handle this 90 million.
How do we get across this bridge?
Right. And so that's why I'm asking for a acknowledgement or reaffirmation from the port of the primacy or the priority of the bridge. That the bridge is the most important thing that we do.
Mike Fox?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
My concern about what I hear you saying is that the cuts will be 0, 0, 0, 100. Is that what I imagine happening in budget season 26 is that there will be a political compromise. Some of the commissioners will have changed. You will have been appointed to the, Biden administration or something. So my fear is, as Arthur's saying, there's no like teeth. We don't have a police officer who's going to come down and give you a red card, and without working into it, it seems unlikely that you could hit the brakes from 60 to 0 in 1 second. Could you use the 14 million reserve to kind of phase yourself out?
Yeah, that's actually the way I had the white paper written, that we would draw down on the 14 million right now, and we would basically wean ourselves off the bridge by 2 years. There's some thought you could actually do it in 1 year, but I understand the challenges that faces. But to do it that way, you would draw down roughly half the current total reserve and then build that reserve back up with revenue coming off the bridge that is not pointed over at the new bridge and not spent on repairing the old bridge. So that fund should continue to raise back up. But it gives each of the operating centers some cushion that they can get their act together, that it's either going to be self-sustaining or it's not. That's kind of the concept that was in that white paper.
And Paul, to add on to that, I believe like once Debbie untangles things, I believe we're going to be able to show, here's where we're at today, here's our goal, and here's how we're going to work towards that goal. I don't believe that we're going to say 0, 0, 100. I think it's going to be more of, we need to figure out where our profit and loss statements are at with each of these different agencies, and then come up with a plan of how do we wean ourselves off. So I don't think it's a 0, 0, 100, but I think that I would just like Kevin and Debbie and, the port staff to be able to say, this is what's comfortable in my department. Maybe some departments wean themselves off faster than others. I'm not exactly sure, but just that having that flexibility would be nice.
So I guess I would love to hear from Mayor Kiefler, because to me, the question is, you use terms like comfortable. I'm curious as to how you think the public will react to this, especially the Washington public.
Well, sorry, I'm driving, so you cut out slightly, but I have been waiting, and I think if you were asking me my thoughts on what I think was the original question that teed up all of this discussion, how would we feel about if the port? That's a hard no for me. I mean, this is a reckoning that's already been delayed, and we need to respect our line and not overstep and tell the port how to run operations. But from the other side of our job, best interest for a bridge, we see this as a key commitment, and it's a one time. It's not a come back to us in 3 years because maybe we need this, or this element that went to the community to get funded was voted down and we need to save it. I have no energy for setting us up for those or our predecessors for those future conversations. I don't think it's in anyone's interest.
Washington resident?
I mean, I would say that what would make me feel confident enough to go to my seatmates to say, hey, we found the happy ground and the happy medium is to say that The port passed a resolution or an ordinance today that by June 30th of 26, the bridge will be its own, what we have 600 level funds, but its own enterprise fund. And that means that all the revenues off the bridge or go to the new bridge after that point. And I think that if we can tell the public, because we have to be able to tell the public something, right? And if we can, that's one thing to say to the public is that every single penny will go to the bridge for repair, replacement, and as hopefully we're building the new one. The public's already going to be mad. They're going to be like, why are you waiting till 26? You should have done this 20 years ago. Then you might not need 90 million. You might only need 30 million. I think that goes a long ways. I would say that in that resolution, or ordinance, actually, an ordinance to create the fund that creates, in essence, its own business unit. You would also say that the port's goal is to reduce its and wean its discretionary movement of the funds that it currently does, $900,000 a year, as much as possible before that to remain with the bridge, or to reduce tolls to reduce current tolls. And then what you're at least saying is that here's the drop dead date that we've all agreed to, so that we would form this bridge authority. Christie and the Port Commission is going to direct staff to, if you've got a grant, say you've got a $900,000 coming in next year, and you're like, well, we want to use that $900,000 on this project over here on the port as a match for a grant to do something, or to just spend it on engineering on Route 1 or something. I think that the port should have to be able to tell the public, their constituents, who they represent, I could have reduced your toll by this amount, right, but instead I'm going to use it over here. And that's what that's my priority this year. And you need to be able to reference that, where the money's coming from and what it's being used for.
That's the point I was trying to make about setting a priority. I have another meeting. Can we have 1 minute so that I can see if I can be excused from that meeting? I think they have a quorum without me, so I just want to call quickly.
Yeah, be right back.
We still have a quorum with fine.
Want to hurry up and vote without him? No, all right.
You might want to assign him to a committee right about now.
I think he's on plenty of committees. But you get where I'm coming with from that?
Yeah, I didn't understand the term enterprise, but I kind of got it.
Do you want to
understand the intent of it?
Do we want to try to draft?
I can't hear you.
Do you want to try to draft a motion or put something in front of everybody that you think is where we are right now?
I love doing it. Work well recorded.
Yeah. Great. Thanks a lot. Okay. I have a temporary exemption.
Do you guys do ordinances?
We do primarily when it affects the public, as far as like our facilities code, and if we're going to ticket the public for
gum on the beach,
yeah, that kind of thing. Outside, typically our tolls are done via resolution.
Your actual toll and setting a toll is done being a road.
Wow. Because the authority to set a toll is in the charter. So we can set the toll by resolution.
I mean, we've got
you set fees by resolution, right? We create an authority in an ordinance and then set a fee by resolution.
We usually do ordinances for our building fees and everything else because it's written into the county code that way.
Well, no.
Usually it's an ordinance that allows for the charge to be assessed, and then the resolution actually refines what the actual amount is. So it gets up, the resolution, the fee resolution would get updated every year.
Anyway, so if I were...
Hey, Kevin. Hey, yeah. Kevin.
Yes.
Kevin, can you think of anything that would be a meaningful binding statement by the that would be the right language to use to be the equivalent. What I want is a red card, but they're not going to give me that.
No, I guess what
a soccer kick.
I guess the only thing I would say is, I mean, even an ordinance could be repealed.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we want some teeth. I mean, I just, you know, there's going to, in 3 years, there's going to be a political compromise because it's going to be a brick wall and a crisis. And I've been in those meetings before.
Yeah. I mean, I think whatever you want to share with the commission will work through it.
I guess the question is, if something is in an enterprise fund, there are terms which describe what can be done with it. Can those terms be changed?
Everything can be changed with the if it's created by a resolution, subsequent resolutions can modify it or change.
So the only thing you can do that binds a future commission is a contract, basically, if you contract for services.
I'm not an attorney, but I think that's.
So if I can jump in here, an entity cannot restrict itself.
Right.
Through that's kind of our in our accounting world, we use the term restriction, and when we use the term restriction, it cannot be self-inflicted. So you cannot restrict yourself, is kind of the way that it works, at least from an accounting standpoint. So whatever money is coming in, the board can direct it, they can, you know, do whatever, but they can't actually specifically restrict it unless they literally give it away at that point or something like that, or put it into a fund,
You don't have restricted funds?
No,
we do, but they're usually, like, for example, the gas tax that the cities and counties get, that's restricted by state law. Or our you know, if you pass a general obligation bond for property taxes, that's restricted by state law. So it's an outside restriction on our revenues when we have that.
It's like if you have a USDA loan, they're going to say you have to have a special fund that you put reserves into, and that is restricted to cost of your contract with the USDA, not a self-restriction.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we can create an enterprise fund, but then, and there are some other limitations, but on tolls there actually aren't. If it was a water fund, for example, then there's really strict limitations under state law, but under tolls, we're the only tolling entity in all of Oregon. So nobody else is doing it. ODOT's talking about it, but we're the only tolling entity. So there's not really much state law well, we toll for them. We run their toll. We do everything for Cascade Locks.
Back of the house. We provide that service.
Yeah, we don't exactly. We don't set policy, but we collect all their tolls. We remit their tolls. They use our software.
There's an easy way to put that in the CFA that we all sign. We can outside put that restriction in that the bridge will be a enterprise fund with
a set of restrictions described in the CFA.
Yeah, I mean, right now it is a revenue fund, but I mean, we could have a set aside revenue fund just.
Well, no, it's an enterprise fund. There's no such thing.
But I think where Commissioner Anderson's going is it's also in there with like the airport.
Right, we could separate
out. But the specification of what the funds can be used for is something which could be put in the CFA and then would be an external restriction.
It would be, and then the port would have to approve that CFA, the revised CFA.
Right.
I mean, that's the only way to make it binding. But I guess
does that make sense, Paul?
Sorry, fiddling with tech. Part of me wants to suggest that, you know, our staffs are smart people, come up with something that, you know, feels like teeth. I want something that feels like teeth.
Right. And I think that's what Jake was describing, that it has to be an outside, it has to be an agreement between two bodies for it to be binding on the port. That's the only teeth you get. The contract, we have a contract up for agreement with the port and the cities and the counties all as parties. That could create the teeth.
Yes, I agree.
How do you feel about adding that into the CFA? I mean,
my only issue with it is that we're going to delay getting the CFA signed because we're going to run it back through legal. The port's already signed. We're going to have to take it back to the port. You guys are going to have to do your thing. I'm feeling some pressure that I think we've got to have the CFA signed by the end of this month for sure, or we could very easily lose opportunities in both state funding. That's my personal opinion. I think the other way to do this is a little bit of trust, which doesn't exist. I get it. That politically, if the port goes back on this, I think there's enough political sway between the two counties, the three cities, the New Bridge Authority. The port wouldn't have a real nice afternoon.
Well, and also just another piece to that, if you have the CFA signed and you have the authority formed, the port only has until the new bridge opens. So they would only be able to do that for 2 additional years, and then they're out.
Well, assuming the bridge gets built on that calendar, we don't know that that's what happens.
True.
I mean, Mike, first of all, I trust you. That's not the issue. These are elected officials, and we know that it's your replacement that I'm concerned about. It's not you. And once you, as Jay keeps reminding us, once you remove the liability, you can't give it back. And so this bridge authority takes on this major liability, and the port can breathe a sigh of relief and can say, "Good, now we can do what we want to do." Obviously, you're not doing that. Christie's not doing that. Ben's not doing. I'm not worried about any of that. I'm worried about you get. I mean, I've seen craziness happen in local politics before. It could happen.
You know, I'll go along with the rest of you. Yeah. If that's the way you think we ought to be going, then I'm fine. I'm just concerned that we're losing a little momentum here, and I don't want to lose an opportunity for funding. And if we don't, great, fine.
I would say, you know,
more teeth if we figure out, and I agree, let's lean on staff, but come back with a recommendation of how to word it. But do we set it up that one of the first actions the actual authority takes is entering into this agreement with the port on how the allocation of those funds will be handled by that end date at the end of 26?
Cart before the horse.
Because then it's between two recognized bodies.
Well, I was going to say, it's in the other case, it's between the counties, the cities, and the port. That's also recognized bodies. I mean, I think that's just as binding. Why don't we ask staff to look at that and see? I go either way.
Well, this is Christy, and in the essence, I understand Mike's timeline. Instead of writing it into the CFA, once the CFA is signed and this bi-state bridge authority is propped up, can't they then say the new bridge is in an enterprise zone, and then can't the port work towards saying the old bridge is in an enterprise zone?
Yeah, no, it's not. Enterprise zone is not the concept. It's enterprise fund. It's a
enterprise fund. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I was just trying to get my head around what you were aiming at with the enterprise zone. You know, we do have an enterprise zone near there, but okay.
No. Fund. Sorry.
It works for everybody. Having the new bridge authority ramp up or revise the equivalent CFA between the two organizations. I kind of like that. We go ahead and sign the CFA. We get this document from the port commitment. They're going to be off of it by 26, 27, 3 years. We push out. That allows the counties to get their nominations in place for the new entity. It gives us some time to work with these people as shadows if they're not us. It shows the legislators that we're standing this thing up quickly. And what we did earlier with the tolling, it allows us to show people in the three governments that we're going to fund part of this thing. If people feel comfortable doing that, I kind of like that idea.
See, I have trouble understanding why it's going to take so long to add a sentence to the CFA unless we use a certain consultant.
We don't have access to that anymore, so.
That's good. That's been discontinued.
I appreciate that.
March.
Thank you very much. I can't imagine this being that hard, but if it turns out that it is, I'd be happy to switch to plan B. I'd like to suggest plan A, that we ask staff to pull this together, and if it is going to take more than a month to do it, then I'm with plan B.
Well, if it takes a month, and frankly, we don't do anything less than a month.
I mean, it'll take a month because we'll have to go back out to each of the 6 and represent and get review and all that. It'll be at least that.
Go ahead.
It's 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would be fine if the port signs a resolution tomorrow, and you can include any whereas wherever you want, but we're part of that resolution is that well, with the knowledge in a whereas that the bi-state working group will support and move forward with the adoption of the CFA. So whereas we will move forward, therefore it be resolved that the Port of Hood River will enter into and agree to a contract with the New Bridge Authority to ensure that the port has turned the current bridge into an enterprise fund by June 30th of 2026, with the goal of drawing down the diversion of bridge funds sooner than that.
Probably need a sentence in there that says the enterprise fund, you have two funds. The Delta tolls go to the New Bridge Fund, and the balance of it goes to the Bridge Repair Fund, or Bridge Replace Repair Fund.
So you'll already
do that first one in there.
So you also want to include in there that the toll, but so we've already put forward a scenario B recommendation.
Yes.
And that's for a toll increase to go towards you want to add that in there as well?
I think
because you can't do it yet.
I don't think you can do it until the bridge is actually built.
No, you can't. You have to go through a public hearing process in order to raise the tolls. So in your resolution, you can't make that.
Could we say in the resolution, any future toll increases will go to a bridge replacement fund? Any future toll increase.
That's not what we're talking about.
No, so you can't do that because say there's a major catastrophe tomorrow and you guys have to go out, which is, may I stop one? Do you currently have any loans out on the current bridge?
No.
There's no loans, nothing outstanding.
Okay. We've got one loan that's backed by the bridge.
We have one loan that's backed by the bridge.
It's very
small. Do not have any loans.
When does it end?
Well, that one we have to figure out because it ends in 2030.
Yeah, but the balance is like,
yeah, we're gonna pay it off.
2 or 3, something like that.
It has a balloon payment on it anyway, so.
Oh,
but that's it.
So it would be the intent to get rid of that.
Good. Well, that makes it easier. I don't think in your resolution we can incorporate that, but I think that you could also pass a resolution with that the port is taking under advisement the bi-state working group's suggestion for scenario B, toll increase with all funds from that addition to go into the new bi-state bridge authorities funds coffer. I think that you could pass 2 resolutions tomorrow, both of that, then it gives the new bi-state bridge authority the knowledge that you're going to attempt this. You might go out to the public, hear your public hearing and go, we can't do that. Who knows? I mean, you guys can choose whatever you're going to do, but I think the resolution on this about what you're doing with the tolls that are being diverted, I think that's probably, you want to keep those 2 separate.
Okay. I understand that.
That makes sense, but are you putting something into that resolution concerning what restrictions will be placed on an enterprise fund, or concerning that there will be restrictions placed? Because an enterprise fund is not what's important, it's how it's restricted that's important.
that turn the current bridge into an enterprise fund by June 30th of 2026 that restricts all revenues from the current bridge to remain with the current bridge or to be used on the future bridge.
That's what I'm looking for. And if there's agreement on that, I'm great. You put in a resolution now, and so the same people who voted on this resolution will be voting
hopefully in July.
On
the restriction,
standing it up as a contract between the bridge authority, the new authority, and the.
So who can take this, your piece of paper and that piece of paper, and create a third piece of paper?
Yeah, email it to me.
You'll take it. Will you do both of them?
Well, I heard, did you want it two separate resolutions?
Yes.
Okay.
One resolution is on the toll increase. And revenue of that toll increase goes straight to the new bridge authority replacement bridge account. Okay. And it's not referenced on this other one because it may or may not.
So I know you guys, I know there's not a lot of time, but so currently right now there is in our multi-jurisdiction or multi-asset revenue fund, you've got bridge ops. Okay, that's all the toll takers, all the people in the front of the house. Then outside of that, there is bridge replacement. And then you've got bridge repair. So do you just want the are you suggesting that you just want the operations separate from the repair and the replacement efforts to be a standalone enterprise fund? Or do you want those other activities? I don't know about the replacement, if that could be, if those grants could be put into
the replacement fund is outside of the enterprise.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's segregated and it's managed and supported by the new authority.
Right. You can't commit. It doesn't matter what commitments you make, and that's not your money.
Right.
But the whole point is that any tolls that come in are used on the bridge, and so clearly it's acceptable to use them for operations
of the bridge.
So you'd have a revenue fund with two departments within that fund, one for operations, sure, one for repair.
Yeah. That's how you.
Well, you'd have. I mean, usually how we do it is you'd have line items or for operations, all my expenses that goes into it. And then I have one for repairs, replacement, all that. That's another subsection of that fund.
Yeah.
And then you would also have, another fund like we have an ER&R or whatever that goes into the replacement fund. So your revenue, all your revenue line would match, your revenue document would then match your expense document where all the excess revenues are getting put into the repair or replacement, now that you've separated them out. But with the agreement that, when that all goes away, any remaining funds get transferred to the Bi-State Bridge Authority to continue managing the bridge.
Gotcha.
And then you can go back to the public and say, this is the actual cost. And I would hope you guys would already be doing that now, especially we would have that looked at for as good as you can for the past, so that when you go out and say, we're actually only diverting 900,000. And so in that, if you do a diversion of $900,000, then what it is it's a loan from that to something else, but it still has to be paid back. I mean, that's how we run our
so we'll keep the replacement activities that receive the grants as a separate fund.
The grants are restricted by the grants anyways.
Yeah, grants are
those will be transferred over to the authority
in time. Yeah,
in time. I mean, and I think this is a good place because in this marriage, when we create this new Bi-State Bridge Authority, we got no money. We don't really have anything. We don't have support. We don't have all that's built up. I mean, that's why this is a marriage. I mean, you guys have the depth and the breadth and the finance people and all that. We don't want to have to go out and hire finance people and everything for an authority that's pretty much a figurehead in name only for a while. And then by making that agreement, which would be a contract, then when we go out for anything that's in the replacement account or the repair account, when we're getting closer and closer to signing that TIFIA, they will make assumptions on Well, that's not 14 million or 15 million in that account. It might be 18, 19, 25 million in that account, because we may end up having to honestly go out for 150 or 160 unless everything goes perfectly. And having that ability, if the bridge is truly the most important thing, we should be able to have it in essence as an enterprise fund right now, so that you're thinking of it as an enterprise fund right now. You're just allowing diversions out of that fund, like you've been doing forever, that don't have to be paid back for the first 3 years.
Standalone enterprise fund.
A standalone enterprise fund. I'm going to add standalone into it.
I think
we have a deal.
Okay, so you want me to read the whole thing?
Yeah, let's read the whole thing.
Okay, so we're going to take all of this and then add one more whereas, and the whereas is the Bi-State Working Group will support and move forward with the adoption of the CFA. Therefore, it be resolved, the Port of Hood River is willing to agree to contract with the New Bridge Authority to ensure that the port has turned the current bridge into a standalone enterprise fund by June 30th of 2026 that restricts all revenues to be used on the current bridge or the future bridge, with the goal of drawing down the diversion of bridge funds sooner than that.
Yeah, and we will have the 3-year date in there.
That's what I put, June 30th of 2026.
But we have to modify this over here because there is data in there.
Yeah, I know this section is going to be gone. I'm replacing it and putting a therefore.
In the original one, does it discuss anything about catastrophic events, or, you know, I'm just thinking of, you know, if something hit the fan and we had to pivot or whatever. Is there anything in that, or is this going to be like the next commission is hogtied to this resolution? Absolutely, no matter what. If there's barge, you know, I mean, not a barge strike, but I don't know, a fire or something else that needs to be managed.
Yeah, so if the marina burns down, which was the example that was used before, you can't take money that is dedicated to bridge and use it for marina. You could borrow with an agreement to pay it back.
Yeah, you got to pay it back.
But it has to be paid back.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is, you know, there's a lot of trust that's been built that's here, because I usually never sign an agreement that say we're going to sign an agreement in the future. Right. I can promise you I wouldn't be on the Bi-State Bridge Authority if it doesn't go through. Is that the one key thing that's allowing this all to happen is that the port there currently doesn't have any loans out against the bridge that are going to be things that have to be paid back after the new bridge. That's the problem that I'm dealing with a wastewater treatment plant is that if we take loans out for the future, now I can't transfer it to the PUD or anyone else, because there's usually those clauses. So knowing that if there's a catastrophic event that happens on the bridge and you have to go take out a 20-year note to fix that problem, well, I would hope that that would be a discussion between the bridge
and the new authority.
We would think.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the fear would be is if I'm serving on the new bridge authority and you guys go and take out a couple of loans like you currently have for district or for lot 1, like you currently have, that's going to come due on 30.
It's actually for the Jensen building. But.
Right, but you could go out between now and 2026. You could go take out a bunch of loans.
Financial advisors and go for that. But we can ask.
Yeah,
I know. Well, it has to be stated as it was proposed.
Yeah, right.
So
thank you. Okay. And that's hopefully not going to be the case, because we're all working in good faith here.
Yes. And did you have a second resolution as well, or was that just the?
So that's the resolution for this, or hopefully signature tomorrow. And I will say if the port signs that tomorrow, we'll move ahead and I'll talk with my seatmates about getting it done. And that's giving you guys, hopefully, because the port has to sell it what you're going to do, whether it's, you know, use that money between now and then for financial software, use it to give benefits to the commuters, the daily commuters, or how you want to do that. Not our place.
And Kevin and Debbie, that 2026 date, do you feel like that's a doable date for, I mean, I know it's a pressured date, but do you feel that that's going to be doable for staff to implement once the staff knows what their own financial systems for marina and airport and all that are?
I would feel more comfortable with 26, 27, but at the end of the day, we have to, work with the commission. I think it's tight. I think it's tight.
I don't know if it'll help, but one commissioner will take the whole port out for a lunch if you make that day. I know there's a big.
I think lunch is the least.
It's like the door, so I hope you know that that's tantamount to.
I was going to point that out, but I was too nice to.
Yeah.
Well, and again, if this is truly a marriage, as everyone is saying, I would hope that if we become closer to that date and it's evident that we're struggling or whatever, we can always have another conversation. My hope is that Debbie and the staff, they all take huge ownership of their departments and they're finally empowered to take hold of their departments, which I'm super happy about. And so I hope that they look at this as a challenge and want to move forward and we have nothing to worry about. So I'm going to think real positive.
So I only call it a marriage since I'm the only probably non-married person there.
Email it. Email
Okay,
me.
so the second one is regards the toll increase that we would like to go after option B. Or scenario B. Yes, we want to recommend that for plus.
Yeah, so that was one other question. So on the toll increase, we also need to make a recommendation with that on timing. I would recommend we follow the timeline that has been drafted for implementation, which takes about 6 or 7 months from the date that the resolution is done to get to a toll increase, which would put us October, November.
I would say on that, ask staff to come back with a recommendation of date specific. Earlier, the better.
Okay.
Because the longer we wait, the less we have in that account being built up.
What was modeled?
Why is it 6 months?
It was modeled as a summer.
We've got
So
to go through
we're already
public
behind.
meetings.
Exactly.
There's 2 public meetings we have to have, and then it takes
Public messaging.
from, yeah, most of it's around messaging, but there's
Training.
also programming that needs to happen, sign ordering, getting them up, all that goes into
Getting staff trained up.
place. Yeah.
But that's where you guys come back with a recommendation. Just please make it aggressive.
Yep.
Because the longer it goes, the less we have in the kitty. Yes, Jenny.
Just a clarification on the frequent flyer discount. If the impact is overly negative or the delay for the programming for that would be overly long to be able to do that, how do you guys want to move forward with scenario B now? Would the commission, the Breeze By toll is supposed to be the frequent flyer discount. That's why there is a big difference between cash and Breeze By, is we try to keep Breeze By low, like cash get high. I understand the reasonings why for the adequate reserves and locals versus tourists and the rest of the state, but for its history, the Breeze By has been the way they've delivered a frequent flyer discount. So a frequent flyer discount on top of that frequent flyer. How do you guys want to handle that? How tied are you? Can you do scenario B without it and do the frequent flyer discount on the new bridge, or do you guys want to wait for us to invest in what we have to do?
I would rather we go as soon as we can with the increase and get the kitty going. Then you guys do a study and a recommendation on a frequent flyer discount.
Okay. So you don't want to
always do that
as
as a second phase.
Or do you?
I'm sorry?
You don't want to hold back the effective date of the increase in order to accommodate the frequent flyer discount? Or do you
the bi-state working group has asked the Port Commission to do option B and to look at this frequent flyer discount. If you guys decide what you're describing now, that's going to be the port's decision, and you're going to have to balance that against how you message this to the community. And
Genevieve, that was so well put. I'm really glad you didn't speak up earlier, because then I would have been like, who needs a frequent flyer discount? Everybody already gets it. It's half the price. Or now a third.
But you know, I understand a trip cap is what you're looking for, but sure. You know, it would add months to try to figure out how that would impact that revenue.
So I would see them as two different,
okay,
two separate things. Number one is we're going out to the public for a rate increase, and it's $1 for every time you go across the bridge. And that is going straight to the new bridge authority for the new bridge, so that we can go out and raise a bunch of money so that we can all pay that back in the future. But we have to do that in order to do it. And I think, you know, for the marketing and messaging, you're going to have the support of Paul and all of us trying to make that case for the port. And then with the frequent discount, because there's a lot of numbers that go into making that thing work and what it should be and how many, and it'll affect some people and not other people. That's a whole different conversation. Yeah. But usually whenever you want to have that conversation, it goes over pretty well.
Yeah, and even if it took another 3 or 4 months to figure all that out, and we've implemented this, that's a nice little piece of icing on the cake, and nobody is going to say, no, I don't want that. So that'd be a nice little surprise.
Unless you raise my rates even more so I can pay for it for someone else. Right.
True.
We have anything else for the agenda?
That was it.
Are we good for this?
We were good. That was the last 2 things.
Hey, I want to thank the members of the bi-state and staff.
Did we take a vote on it?
We better take a vote.
Yeah, we should probably take
a vote.
I thought I made it. Did I read it and not make it? Well,
you read the resolution, you didn't make the motion.
I think the resolution was clearly captured on the recording, the motion.
And the resolution is for the port commissioners. It's not for us.
You're recommending.
So we're recommending that language be added to the resolution that staff drafted.
That's what I understand.
And I think that would be just. Do we all agree with that?
Okay,
I do agree.
I agree.
One agree. Marla. Mayor Blackburn, are you okay?
I agree. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Technical difficulties.
Mayor Blackburn, I agree.
Okay, so, and I agree as well. So we've got that one behind us. Hey, I want to thank everybody. These are 2 really critical issues that I've been worrying about for a long time. And I appreciate everybody hanging in and reaching a compromise here that I think will work for all of us.
There is one other thing, if I could ask you to look at it. There is a draft of a CFA announcement that we would like to do once they're signed. It's in your packet. If you could take a look at that, or if you need me to send it separately. Just so we can, once these are all signed, we would like to put that out and make sure everybody's aware that we've sent
CFA separately. The
yeah,
packet is 26.5 megabytes.
Yes, I will send it to you separately. Yep.
Okay, and after we have the meeting tomorrow, we will get notified. We'll notify all of the members of what happened during the meeting. Hopefully it's all positive, and off we go. We will also send you a copy of the resolution.
Thank you.
Good.
If you get it anytime tomorrow, whenever you get the resolution, can you email that to me so I can use it as discussion for my CMA tomorrow?
Yeah,
for my regular scheduled meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.